Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ster Clear Podcast. This is episode 3 of the Ster Clear Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Capps, and today I'm joined by Jordan Missig.
Thank you for having me, Dom. I'm glad to be on the show with you.
Definitely great to have you. And before we even get started, I just want you to tell the viewers out there about your racing career right now. Where are you at right now?
So right now I am in Homestead, Miami. I'm going to be testing out here this weekend for possible future upgrades, I should say, for my career. But right now I currently am racing in the Radical Sports Car Series for Radical Sports Cars North America in the Blue Marble Ultra Premium Cocktails Radical Cup Series for North America. So we are about five races into the season out of our 6-race season, and our last race of the season will be out at Circuit of the Americas in November 16th. So that's where we're sitting right now.
And how you guys been doing this year?
We've been doing pretty good this year. We have an 18-race schedule. Go to each track, race 3 races at each track. So out of the season so far, we have collected a total of 5 wins on the year, and currently are second in points, 66 points behind the leader going into the final race of the season.
So how you feeling going to the final race? You think you got a shot at the title?
We have a shot. We got to be almost a near perfect weekend for us, and then we need a little bit of luck to come our way to get any chance to win the title. But I think it's still possible. The window is still open, so we're keeping our hopes and dreams up.
All right, sounds good. We'll definitely update the viewers next week on how you guys do. In the future, we'll update them. And so we'll jump from Homestead over to Talladega, where we saw one of the craziest races of the year. So one of the craziest races at Talladega in recent memory, actually. And it ended up being Ryan Blaney winning by 7/1000ths of a second over Ryan Newman in a crazy finish, even though there was only about 8 to 10 cars there at the finish.
Who would have thought Ryan Blaney, out of all people, would have come away with a win at a restrictor plate?
It's actually funny. I had him on the Ster Clear. He was one of my Ster Clear drivers last week. He's had some terrible luck. I think before this race, he never had a top 10 at Talladega. He was one of those guys that just always got caught up in wrecks or had some issues. I know one year he got wrecked by Keselowski. He definitely surprised me by getting through everything and being there at the end to actually, he was leading on the white flag lap, but ended up repassing Ryan Newman there on the last lap. I was actually quite surprised.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the name of the game, what they say about Talladega, it's all about survival, and definitely Ryan Blaney was able to survive the whole race, I should say, and was able to come out on top of the win at the end.
Yeah, and Ryan Newman in that 6 car definitely outperforming what it's been doing in the last few years. It would have been pretty cool to see him win at one of the tracks that we all know he hates. He hates Talladega. He's definitely said it in post-race interviews before. He's not a fan of this racing, not keeping the cars on the track. We saw Brendan Gaughan flip.
Mm-hmm.
So Ryan Newman, that would have been a big win because when was the last time this? It's got to be 2011. The Coke 0400 since the 6 car has been in victory lane.
Yeah, and it's been a while. It would have been good to see Roush go back into victory lane, especially after all the struggles they've been through, and only having Ricky Stenhouse be in victory lane the past couple of years. So they're not really, I wouldn't say, new at winning at restrictor plates, I will say. So winning with Ricky Stenhouse the past couple of times. But it would be nice to see Ryan Newman get a couple wins, because now Ryan Newman's kind of getting to the stage of his career where we're not really seeing him win as often. I think the last time we only saw him win was back at Phoenix a couple years ago when he was driving for Richard Childress Racing in the 31. So It's every time Newman gets a shot to win, he's kind of like the underdog now, where everyone's kind of pulling for him because he's not really going back to victory lane as much. So it's nice to see the old guys like Newman and the guys who have kind of fallen off the sport a little bit get another shot to try to put their name back on top of the sport.
Yeah, definitely. And you look at Newman and Stenhouse. We'll break down into later about Ricky Stenhouse. We'll talk about him later, but those teams definitely almost looked as underdogs now. And Ryan Newman, definitely one of the hardest racers. He's the toughest guy to pass on the track. I'm actually surprised he gave Blaney a shot at the bottom, but it happened. They didn't call Blaney for below the yellow line. I like the call. I think it was clean racing at the end. I think they handled that finish quite well, actually.
Yeah, I like the finish itself. I like the rule that they didn't call for Blaney. The only thing I would have liked to see from Newman is since it was the last lap. I know Blaney was coming with a huge run and everything, but since it was the last lap, the only thing I would like to see from Newman is probably a little bit more of an aggressive block there at the end, down to the inside. I mean, if you're gonna get turned, that's the place to do it. You're not really fighting for anything at that point because you're coming to the end of the race, and plus you're already out of the playoffs in Newman's standpoint, so the worst thing he's probably going to do is push Blaney below, which even lower than the WL line, if anything, or he's just going to get turned himself. So me personally, I would love to see a little bit more of an aggressive block from Newman, but he's kind of one of those racers he doesn't race you like dirty, but he races you hard and clean. So, it's kind of like the Newman way, I would say.
Yeah, it's a driving style that drivers hate and some people love it. The fans definitely like it. It provides, harder racing instead of, people moving over for each other. Ryan Newman definitely one of those hard racers, and he's one of the old guys now, and who knows how much time Ryan Newman's got left on the racetrack. I mean, you don't know.
It's weird because, Newman comes in. It's funny because we say this because everyone's calling about Johnson on how much time he has left when Newman came in at the exact same time as Johnson did. And I have yet to hear one person say how much time does Newman have left. So I find that very interesting that we brought that up.
It just shows the gap of the drop off from like Jimmie Johnson to being a champion to missing the playoffs, and now Ryan Newman, I mean, yeah, he did drop. He's missing the playoffs. Well, he did make the playoffs, actually. And,
yeah, he did.
It's definitely he's not as good as he once was, but he's getting what that car deserves. He's getting he's getting more than what that car can do. You could see, I mean, I think they saw that 6 car wasn't as bad as it seemed to be when they put Matt Kenseth in that car. Matt Kenseth put that car up in the top 10. Pretty consistently, so it's a car that could run up in the top 10. And Ryan Newman's done the same thing.
I think we're starting to see this 6 car back to where it used to be when Roush was a heavyweight team, back like in like 2010, 2011 when David Reagan was driving the car and Roush was supplying 4 cars. Reagan was running up front. He was winning 2 races in that car, running up front, top 10 almost every week. Both Kenseth and Newman are kind of showing that same potential that 6 car once was showing, and I think they're bringing it back to, you just throw good drivers in that car, and next thing you know, the car's actually going to be running up front and contending for top 10s, top 5s, and maybe even possibly wins. So I don't know if it just comes down to the driver or experience, but when you put someone who knows what they're doing behind the wheel, it really shows the experience and everything coming.
I think a big mistake in handling the Roush Fenway cars was putting Trevor Bayne and Ricky Stenhouse, 2 inexperienced drivers, together, so they really didn't have a veteran driver to learn from. I think that was a big issue for the Roush cars, and they couldn't learn off each other because they had no veteran presence to help them both build.
Yeah, and I mean, when they both did join, they did have Greg Biffle in the cars too at this time as well. So I mean, you did have a veteran experience, but Greg was kind of on his way out, and Roush wasn't going to keep him around for a very long time. And Greg wanted to have competitive cars, and that's kind of when Roush was starting its decline because Greg Biffle himself wasn't running up front. Stenhouse was just coming into the series, and Trevor Bayne wasn't as experienced as well. So I think that was really one of the bigger downfalls that Roush had, and that's when the decline started to happen.
Yeah, and it's good to see Roush back up, working their way back up. They've got Chris Buescher coming in next year. I think that's going to be a huge upgrade to that 17 car. I think this team is looking pretty good. It's nowhere near where they were in like 2006 when they had 5 strong cars, but
yeah, no.
It's getting up there to where they're starting to be, they'll start to contend for more top 5s, maybe get a win or 2. And, it's a slow progress to get back up to the top because you got those top guys like the Gibbs guys, the Stewart-Haas and Penske guys. it's hard to get back up there when you've got powerhouses like this right now.
And
So
it's hard. It's also hard for them because you have Penske and Stewart Haas up there, and they're already challenging for wins and championships, and they're in the Ford manufacturer camp along with Roush. So to see Roush a little bit further back and kind of like a little bit behind the eight ball with the Ford program, it kind of tells them that they need to get their acts together and get back up to where the competition level really is.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, going from, Roush, I kind of want to segue that into the fact that we only have two drivers locked into the round of 8, and those being Ryan Blaney and Kyle Larson. Now, how many people going into the round of 12 thought these two guys would be locked in before they even had to reach Kansas?
Honestly, I think these two drivers everyone had them out at this point. Larson Larson was never a fan of Talladega and never has been. And it clearly showed this weekend too. He got caught up in one of the bigger wrecks, and Blaney himself, his best track of these three races had to be Kansas. Kansas has to be his best track of these three races in the round of 12. And, everyone thought that would be his best shot to get in. But judging by where he was at the playoff line coming in, he was below it. And I'm sure Larson would be in the same situation if he did not get that win. So I think everyone had these two playoff drivers out, and two others going to be going with them, which now is going to be turned to four different drivers that are going to be going out, and these two are going to be moving on.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Ryan Blaney being the only Penske guy locked in. You got the other two Penske guys with uncertainty. You've got Logano. He sits at the cutoff line in 8th, 18 points to the good, and Brad Keselowski's only 2 points ahead of him in 7th. So, I mean, you look at it, if one of those bottom 4 win, Byron, Chase Elliott, Clint Bowyer, Alex Bowman, if one of those guys win, it's almost going to be a battle between the two Penske guys to see who's in and who's out.
Well, we go back to a couple years ago. Logano won the race back in 2015 at Kansas as well, when it was a day race. Now it's going to be a day race again, too. We fast forward a little bit again to earlier this year in the spring. Who won the race? Number 2 car, Brad Keselowski. He went on to win the race. So both of those guys have won in the past couple of years here at Kansas. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's going to bring a heavyweight fight to the table because all the Henry cars this year with their mile-and-a-half programs have been top-notch. Because actually, if I'm mistaken, I think it was Chase Elliott won this race last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then earlier this year at a mile-and-a-half at Chicagoland, Alex Bowman won this year. So, you're going in 2 Penske cars against 2 top Henry cars. And then William Byron himself, he's going to show some speed, but I don't know if he has what it takes to go up and win. I mean, he's already, 27 points back. So,
yeah.
I'm looking for him to point his way in. He's probably not going to get a win. So, if any one of the drivers who's going to be out, it's probably going to be Byron out of the 300 cars. That's probably guaranteed out. So, but it's going to be interesting to see the 2 Hendrick cars and the 2 Penske cars kind of go at each other to try to get these last 2 spots.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, so out of the 4 people below the cut line, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Clint Bowyer, William Byron, who has the best chance? If you had to pick one of those 4 to win the race in Kansas, who wins?
Well, I'm going to say Alex Bowman has the best shot. He won earlier this year at Chicagoland, beat Kyle Larson in the last couple of acts, and we look back to Kansas earlier this year. He finished second to Brad Keselowski, and he was dominating the race most of the time. So I think Bowman has showed the speed at Kansas before, and he showed the speed this whole year at the mile-and-a-half. So we've seen it the whole year. So I mean, I feel like he's going to be bringing a top car to be winning this race this weekend.
Yeah, if you look, it looks like a must-win for these guys. But if Alex Bowman goes out there and say he, finishes in the top 5 in both stages, and say Keselowski, putzes around at 15th, or Logano, I mean, points are right back on the board. I mean, if Bowman gets like 15 stage points, he'll only be about 3 to 5 points behind these guys going into the final stage. So you can't underestimate, Bowman especially him at the mile and a half, getting a lot of stage points and working his way, within striking distance points wise without having to win. So that's also an interesting dynamic that will be played into this race. It's going to definitely be a lot clearer once we get past stage 2. But, Keselowski hasn't looked strong. He has
No.
looked off lately.
Yeah, and earlier this year in this mile and a half program, besides his win at Kansas earlier this year, he hasn't really been like showing potential speed or like running up front and leading laps. So he is a front runner, yes, but he hasn't been like up to our standards, most of our standards of what we think he does. So I would see my game plan would probably be for the Penske cars is to try to get as much staying points as you can, and then try to nurse the car home as much. Try to nurse the car home in the end of stage 3 to just kind of finish the race and get your points all you can in stage 1 and 2.
Yeah, and Keselowski, he's been up and down these mile and a halves. You look, he's got those wins at Atlanta and Kansas, but he's also got finishes of 19th at Charlotte, 20th at Kentucky. Tracks that, Keselowski is notoriously good at, and he's not finishing up toward the front.
The only thing I could think of the saving the Penske cars would be if they're up front and a late race restart happens, because Penske seems to have the short run speed, whereas the Hendrick cars like to have the long run speed. So if you get like a short restart, late race restart towards the end of the race, I'd look for the Penske cars to be the strongest of the bunch. But if you're going on a long run, kind of like what we had at Chicago at the end of the race, I'd look for those Hendrick cars to be up front.
Yeah, we saw this at Kansas in the spring. It ended on a green-white checkered. Brad Keselowski just kind of pulled away from everyone while it was just a mad fight for second. Keselowski, and Logano, they're good at restarts. I put them up there, right behind Kyle Busch for best restarters. They seem to never lose positions on restarts. They are always aggressive. They'll make any move possible. They see the smallest hole, they're going to take it. So, and toward the end of that race, if their points are right on the line, like right on the edge, I mean, they're going to go for it. They're not going to lay back. They're going to go for everything. And I think this race could be one of the craziest Kansas races coming towards the end.
No doubt. I mean, we even saw in the spring, I mean, some of the restarts were 3-4 wide. I mean, it's crazy on these restarts. So I think that's one of the hypes that's going to be coming up for this weekend and why everyone's kind of looking forward to this race as a cutoff race. The pressure is definitely going to be on for all these drivers, and we're going to be interested to watch and see what happens.
We could see some big wrecks. And speaking of big wrecks, last week at Talladega on Monday, we saw 3 big wrecks. And the first one seemed to be the most controversial. It was a debate between whether Alex Bowman threw a dumb block and caused the wreck or Joey Logano just ran to the back of him. In my opinion, I saw Logano get a huge push from Clint Bowyer, and Logano had no time to check up.
Mm-hmm.
And Bowman just threw a wild block that I think wasn't too smart for the time of the race. I just don't think it was the right move to make. I think right there you just got to settle for getting past. I think you just got to take it at that point with 5 laps to go. In stage 2, I think you just got to accept the pass there. I think it's just not worth it to throw a block when a guy's going 5 to 10 miles per hour faster than you.
Yeah, no, it was a desperation move on Bowman's part, definitely because he knows there's 4 laps to go in the stage. There was 3 Fords behind him. You had Logano getting pushed from Boyer's being pushed from Keselowski. So, and then Logano just gets a huge run, goes to the inside. Bowman just knows he's going to go to the inside, so he just tries to put a desperation block on it to keep himself in front, and ends up taking not only him out, but the rest of the field out as well with him. I think, it's just coming down to the end of stage 2. It's your last chance to get points, and he wanted those points badly, and, suffer the consequences for it in the long run. But I think, in both situations, Logano didn't have much time to react. The only thing I think Logano probably could have done was maybe because he was on the outside lane, and when he went to the inside, he went to the middle lane. Maybe the only thing Logano probably could have done, I don't know if he had enough time to really react to make this possible, but maybe go all the way down to the inside and kind of do like an elevator drop from like the third lane to down to the bottom lane where, Bowman wasn't going to be there, and where he can stick a nose in there in time. But I think Logano's closing speed was just too quick that I don't know if he would have had enough time to get all the way down there before Bowman shut the door on him.
Yeah, definitely. It was unfortunate. You never, you don't want to see the big one happen that early. You want to see as many cars on the racetrack once you get towards the end of the race, because we don't like seeing races where there's only 8 guys left. This is not fun to watch. It's not fun to, because then at that point they're just gonna go in a single file line with 8 guys, and there's no point in racing. And it's unfortunate. Kyle Larson got caught up in that. Good thing he had that win at Dover. Jimmie Johnson, he had nothing to lose that day, and he got caught up into that. And actually, I want to get into something real quick. What is your opinion on these manufacturers and how they handle the plate racing going into it?
I think the manufacturers themselves have taken into initiative that ever since, I want to say, last year when Stewart-Haas Racing and the Fords were just dominating the race and everything, and just the manufacturers duel through there, that's when the whole manufacturers war started, I believe, was when the Fords just stayed in the line, dominated, and basically dictated the whole race, made it to where no one could pass them. Now all the manufacturers want to work together to make sure and solidify that, their manufacturer is going to win. Chevy's game plan was to get all the Chevys up front and run in a single file line so nobody could pass them. And if they had to pass them, they go on the outside lane. So they tried numerous times to try to get their runs up to the front, while Ford was also trying their plans. And the Toyotas over here are like the runt to the litter, and they just had to tag along with the Fords or the Chevrolets, whatever they do. So it's definitely a powerhouse manufacturer that's kind of come to fruition in the Cup Series itself. I don't know if I really like it. It really makes the drivers make questionable moves, I will say, but it definitely spiced things up. Like you see Chase Elliott or like William Byron at the front of the field. Next thing you know, the Fords are coming on the inside, but you have the Chevys on the outside. They'll move up to the high side to go help the Chevys out and leave the door open. So I think it creates a lot of open window, open door moves for some of these guys, which could make the racing a little bit more interesting, but it can make it a lot more risky, as we saw.
Yeah, I know there was one point where Kurt Busch got moved out of line from the Chevys, and it wasn't even like his choice, and they were all over him. Like Chevy was all over him for doing that. Like they were getting upset with him, and I just didn't get the point of that. Even how early it was. Also, I know NASCAR wasn't too happy with the Chevrolet drivers meeting. When it was raining, they were not too pleased with that meeting.
What are you talking about? They're just discussing the new 2020 Corvette, like Chase Elliott said. I don't know what they're having a problem with. I'm just joking.
Oh, the Corvette, just the 2020 Corvette, yeah.
Having the mid-race meeting, of course, did draw a lot of attention to the Chevy camp as well. Of course, we have no idea. We kind of have an idea of what was discussed in the meeting, but we don't have the official know-it-all of what was happening. But it was definitely interesting because a lot of the guys were trying as best they can to lay off the gas, create enough holes, try to back up the field a little bit to let each other in line and everything, and not taking the holes like they normally would or filling a lane. It used to be a teammate sport where you only work with your teammates and that's it. Now you're working with other teams and manufacturers. So it definitely throws a wrench into everything, and you're definitely having to worry about a lot more people than just you and your teammates.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I'm not a big fan of it. I think they should just go out there. And yeah, if it's a team that does it, I think that's fine.
I think it's fine when it's a team, but when you bring like a whole manufacturer stable, especially when Chevy has 13 cars in the field, then it kind of starts to get a little out of hand.
Yeah, that's why the Toyotas didn't even bother, because they only had 7 of them. So they just had to kind of tag along with whoever they were going to be with. They were just kind of on their own, making their own moves. Definitely, with this kind of racing, I think you just got to, at that point, you got to go for yourself, if not just your teammates. Hendrick could work together. I think it's just way too complicated, way too much for all the Chevys to have to do everything for the Chevys. And just, it's really annoying. And they're saying, oh, we got to protect our playoff drivers. But, there's only so much you could do at Talladega to protect drivers. One wreck happens, one bump, and in the front of the field, and the whole, the rest of the field is just caught up. So there's not much you could do to prevent that. We saw that in the second big one. Kurt Busch is getting a push from Chris Buescher. Buescher getting pushed from behind, and they hit William Byron. And with the nose of the Chevy kind of coming to a point, it sent Byron right up into Joey Logano and started the second big one.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a very unfortunate situation that happened to Byron. I mean, he was kind of just going in a straight line, and just the bumps were just getting a little bit too heavy, and it just jacked the rear end of his car up a little bit and just sent him to the left and back to the right and into Logano itself. Definitely an unfortunate situation for all the guys who were caught up in it as well, especially Logano. He was having a good day up front, and it caught up like some 5, 6, 7 good cars were in the lead pack. So definitely a wreck that we did not want to see, of course.
Yeah, it hurt Byron. It killed whatever chance he had at, pointing his way into the next round. It kind of stirred up the field, but it didn't calm him down because you come into the third big one, and, I'm still curious as to if Ricky Stenhouse going up to side draft Kyle Busch kind of caused him to get turned. I'm not too positive. I know Kurt got into Kyle. I don't know if the side draft had anything to do with him getting turned.
The only thing I can think of is that Kyle came down to kind of side draft Stenhouse a little bit, and then as Stenhouse was kind of coming up the side draft, Kyle thought maybe Ricky was going to run into the side of him or door slam him, and he tried to pull back to the right a little bit, and as he was doing that, the side force from Ricky Stenhouse just kind of pushed his car to the right a little bit more, and it just kind of hooked him around. That's the only thing I can see, because I really didn't see a true contact or turn from Kurt that would turn the 18 around. So, I mean, I think it had to deal with all airflow, but I mean, that's all I can tell from just the camera angles I was able to see.
Yeah, and that wreck being crazy. And Brendan Gaughan, him and Keselowski were flying on the outside as it happened. I mean, Brendan Gaughan was about to shoot out to the lead. He gets clipped, flips over, just kind of lands up back on all four wheels. Not even a hard hit for him, he said. The car kept moving, didn't get hit really again hard. Buescher got into him again, but it wasn't as hard. But definitely another big wreck. You saw Chase Elliott get into it. Other playoff drivers, Kyle Busch, if he doesn't get caught up into that, is probably locked into the next round right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 40 points for him is a lot, so I really can't see Kyle Busch unless he has something catastrophic happen.
And Keselowski got a huge hit too in that wreck as well. So, he was really good on points as well. And now he's only 18 or 7? No, he's like what?
He's 20.
20 to the good?
20 to the good. Yeah, he's 20 to the good. You got Logano 18. So, yeah, no, a big hit for Keselowski. Keselowski was trying to, get himself in a comfortable position. And now, like I said before, if one of these bottom 4 drivers win, Keselowski is 2 points ahead of Logano. So
you're gonna have a playoff spot between the 2 Penske cars.
Yeah, and everyone was expecting 2 Penske cars in the round of 8, but not Ryan Blaney being one of them.
Ryan Blaney's win turned a 300 car battle for the last 2 spots into a 2-car Penske battle.
So here, if I've got the points up, if Newman won that race, the points would be this. Alex Bowman would be in 8th, 4 points ahead of Chase Elliott, 6 points ahead of Boyer, 7 points ahead of Blaney, and Byron 9 points back. So 12th to 8th would have been separated by 9 points.
Way to go, Blaney. You ruined the fun for all of us fans.
You would have had Hamlin basically locked in 60 ahead, Truex 52, Kyle Busch 45. Harvick 40, Keselowski, Logano, both 24 and 22 ahead without having the risk of, a bottom 4 driver making it even closer for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm saying, I agree with you, Alex Bowman. I think he's got the best shot to win this weekend. And if he does, that just turns Logano and Keselowski against each other because Keselowski's 16 behind Harvick, and I don't know how much he's going to pick up on Harvick.
Yeah, no, you're not going to pick up many points on that, especially when you go to a track like Kansas as well. I mean, you're only going to your max is to get what? Keselowski hasn't been running that good at Kansas, so I would probably say his best shot is to try to go for both stage wins, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That would be his best shot. But I do want to give a quick, not a shout out, but I do want to give a mention to on the last lap, Denny Hamlin when he was pushing Ryan Newman with a messed up nose and everything
Hmm.
on the last lap and everything like that. I mean, Hamlin, he was having a hard day at Talladega. He was definitely not one of his best days for sure. Had no, damage on the nose and was able to push Newman to the lead and almost turned him in turn three. Actually,
Yeah, I
coming to the
thought they were
checkered
done.
flag.
I thought they were done. I thought Newman was going around, and I thought someone back in like fifth or sixth was going to win the race because that would have been ugly if he got turned there. It would have almost been like a couple of years ago when Chase Elliott and Daniel Suarez wrecked
Yeah,
in turn three, but Hamlin laid off. I think Denny, that whole race, it was interesting. He had he was running up front, and then he had the cow flap fly off, and multiple cars had that issue. I wonder why. I wonder why they were flying off so easily.
it's gotta be the airflow that travels underneath the cars and is pushing up on the cow flaps to make them lift up underneath the engine bay. I think it's just got to be the turbulent air and everything. But NASCAR mandates that they need to be optional to work only when the car like turns around to keep the air down so the car doesn't go flying. But the problem is the cow flaps are flying before the car even gets a chance to spin out.
Yeah, and we saw that. David Reagan had that. I think Chris Buescher had the problem too. And then Hamlin he got the speeding penalty with Truex in stage two, so they both went a lap down. And right at about a lap or two after they got lapped, that's when the first big one struck. Hamlin was able to stop, but he kind of when you're on that banking and you stop, it kind of just drags your car down
Yeah.
naturally. So he kind of got stuck in the grass. He got a little fender damage on the left front. So that's why he had all that tape and stuff on the front end. And then he just kind of got the lucky dog. He worked his way up to like fourth in line. Then the caution came out, so he got the lucky dog. And then he just kind of hung out back. He didn't want to bother. He knew they were going to wreck. He said there was only be 8 cars left at the finish. He was kind of right. And he was there at the end. I mean, he was able to even get to the outside. I think if Blaney and Newman made some contact or something, Hamlin could have won.
Yeah, no, he definitely could have won. He was there at the end, which applaud him for being there at the end and being the smart driver to understand what these races are like and how they're normally going to finish. That's just being around the sport for a while and understanding how all of his competitors act and how the drivers act themselves.
That's why he's one of the best restrictor plate drivers. He's got 2 Daytona 500s and a win at Talladega. Definitely a reason for that. He's usually there at the end. And, being there at the end, or on a, look at Jimmie Johnson. Are we seeing the end of Jimmie Johnson? They announced today, he told Jeff Burton that his future with Hendrick, him and Rick Hendrick will know his future in 4 to 6 months. What do you think about that, Jordan?
It's going to be based on the rest of the season and how the season goes. He's shown he's had top 10 speed at most of these tracks, but the only thing that we're not seeing out of Jimmie Johnson that we all used to know and really know him for is he's not leading laps as we know him. He's not leading laps. He's not passing some of the competitive cars. He's just running around the top 10, top 5 areas, which is good and all for points, but you need to do it consistently on a season basis if you want to be able to be like have a shot at a championship or better yet even get out of the playoffs, which obviously did not happen this year. This was definitely a down year slump, and same was last year for Jimmie being winless now in almost 2 full years, almost 2 full seasons now. It's all going to depend on how these next 5 races happen for Jimmie. If he runs up front and maybe gets a win, I see him going for maybe another 2 or 3 years, maybe until 2021, 22, maybe, where his outright contract is. But if we don't see any improvements this year in how Jimmie feels, next year could be it. Next year could be the last year for Jimmie Johnson because, Hendrick's going to want to get a new guy in. He's going to want to get a new guy in the 48 car, definitely to spice things up a little bit, try to bring new life to the team. And Jimmie's going to be he's getting towards the end of his career, as we all know, and age-wise and performance-wise, I feel like he's still there, but he's just got a lot of work and got to get back into this groove that he is known to be in.
Yeah, you look at it, Jimmie Johnson definitely nowhere near where he was about even 5-6 years ago. Could see something in January, kind of like Jeff Gordon made his announcement in January of 2015, except no one really no one was like
That's the thing.
waiting for Jeff Gordon to say
No one.
that
Yeah, he just kind of came out and did it on his own terms.
because
Whereas,
Jeff Gordon was in 2014, he had one of his best years in his career without winning the championship.
mm-hmm. It's weird because yeah, Jeff just kind of came out on his own terms, but we've heard multiple times that Jimmie wants to continue. He wants to race a couple more years. So I think Jimmie wants to race. The question that I think now it comes down to is Rick Hendrick going to be able to offer him a ride for the next couple of years like Jimmie's asking for?
Yeah, and the only thing that kind of keeps me with Jimmie Johnson in that car if Jimmie wants to is there's no one that's really standing out in the junior motorsports program, the Hendrick, lower series. I just don't see anyone standing out. Yeah, there's Noah Gragson, but I don't think Noah Gregson's ready. I don't think he's too good performance-wise. Like, he's a good driver, but he's nowhere near like where Chase Elliott was when he stepped into the 24 car.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see anyone that they'd be rushing to, kind of get him out for.
Well, there's one person that I can think about them bringing in, and it kind of does make sense a little bit. And now actually we could segue into another segment that we wanted to talk about, and that is Ross Chastain's going to the number 10 Coghlan Racing for the Xfinity Series next year, which is another Chevy Camp team. And Coghlan Racing has really no affiliates to like Chip Ganassi Racing or anything else. They're kind of like their own team. So I think, if Ross Chastain excels in the Xfinity Series, which we've seen before, he's gotten, 2 wins now in the Xfinity Series. So, if he does well, I think he could be going to the Hendrick Motorsports 48 camp if Johnson's on his way out.
Because there's also been, rumors of maybe Chastain going into the 1 car at Ganassi after next year. I know they're bringing back Kurt Busch for next year.
Yeah, and Ganassi's really like Kurt Busch too being there as well. But Kurt Busch is also getting older as well. I mean, Kurt's been in the series longer than Jimmie has been.
Yeah, I think I saw something. There's only 2 guys that raced in 2000, like the 2001 Daytona 500 in the field, and Kurt Busch being one of them. So, yeah, I mean, there's time's ticking on Kurt Busch too. I think Jimmie Johnson is just the biggest one right now. I think Jimmie Johnson is the biggest name on whether he'll be done just because of all the success he's had. I mean, Kevin Harvick's, just as old as them too. Kevin Harvick went before Jimmie Johnson, but Harvick's got no signs of stopping.
Yeah, no, Harvick has no signs of stopping yet. Like I said before, even Newman's just been in the same draft class as Johnson was. I mean, they both came in 2002, and we've heard no signs of like Newman saying anything about him stopping or anything like that. But yet everyone's talked about how Jimmie's going to be ending here soon, or is this the end for Jimmie Johnson?
Yeah, and Jimmie Johnson, it'll be interesting to see this offseason. Definitely going to create a lot of buzz. Going to be a lot of rumors.
Like, because it comes down to this. I think Jimmie is able and capable to race a couple more seasons, but the thing is now I think it's coming down to what all of us NASCAR fans do not want to see is we want to see Jimmie go out on his own terms. The last thing we want to see is have Rick Hendrick kick him out of a ride because he's not performing to his standards.
Yeah,
and that's the last thing all of us want to see from Jimmie Johnson's career. We'd rather see him just kind of do what Jeff did, go out on his own terms when he's ready, not go out because you're not performing the right way.
Yeah, and Jeff Gordon, even after his Martinsville victory, I think before or after Phoenix, Rick went up to him. He even asked him. He said, "Are you sure you want to go? Like, you can keep your ride next year if you want to come back. Like, if you're having second thoughts." And Jeff just said, "No, I'm good. I'm content."
Yeah, because Jeff kind of just set his mind and just kept it there. I think he was looking at bigger, better things that he had lined up too. And I don't think Jimmie's at that point yet. I don't think he's thinking anything past the racing career as of now.
Yeah, so one thing I do hope is I hope Jimmie Johnson announces it, whatever year it is. I hope he does announce it preseason so he does get that, farewell tour, that he deserves. Definitely deserves a good one like Jeff Gordon did, and it even makes even more of a drive for that last year. Jeff Gordon getting into the Final Four. In his final year, I think that was huge for the sport. It definitely, was very popular with the fans. Even though he didn't win the championship, he still got that emotional last victory
Yep.
at Martinsville. You definitely want to see another moment like that with Jimmie Johnson. It definitely would not be right for Jimmie Johnson to, go out with like 3 or 4 winless years. It just doesn't seem fitting for Jimmie Johnson.
And it would feel if really fitting if Jimmie in his final year was to by chance go up to the very end and possibly have a shot to win the record-setting 8th championship that everyone's wondering if he's ever going to be able to do. So,
Yeah.
It'd be fitting for him, be the true like kind of Jimmie Johnson way, some would say. But yeah, we just have to kind of wait and see what happens in the next 4 to 6 months with Jimmie.
All right. So from Jimmie Johnson, we'll move into some of the, new signings this week. Clint Boyer, he re-signed for next year. Tony Stewart says he's the guy he wants in the car. He's got everything he likes, in a driver. So, it kind of locks down Cole Custer from another ride. The only ride that's kind of uncertain right now is the Daniel Suarez ride.
Yeah, I think Boyer's the right fit. He's in a good spot there at Stewart-Haas. He's been performing really well. Still in the playoffs, yet he is underneath the cut line going into Kansas. But that again, that's his home track too. So who knows what could come from there. Suarez ride. I mean, we haven't seen much from him. He of course missed the playoffs this year as well. I think maybe a couple more years if he misses the playoffs next year, that might solidify the decision to give Custer a ride. Who knows? We won't know anything on that until it actually happens. But yeah, I think it's definitely a good move to keep Boyer in the ride. Boyer obviously likes working with Kevin Harvick, Stewart-Haas, and everybody else there in the Ford camp. So definitely a good move for them, and I expect Boyer to be doing a little bit better than he was this year for next year.
Yeah, definitely. Clint Boyer's done some good things in that 14 car. He's gotten a couple wins, in the last couple of years. Ricky Stenhouse, actually, it was announced that he's basically swapping rides with Chris Buescher. He's going to replace Buescher at JTG Doherty, and I think it's a good move. It'll be interesting to see. I think Buescher's going to get the better end of this swap.
Yeah, you're kind of switching champion for champion here in the Xfinity Series, I will say. I would say Chris Buescher himself, he proved when he was in the Xfinity Series that he was capable of winning races and contending for championships. So I feel like in this year, even at JTG Doherty equipment, he's been proven that he's been able to run up top 10 equipment, top 15s up there. So I feel like if he goes to Roush, he's going to be finding himself a little bit more close to the front, possibly contending for wins in this next season. I think, putting a new face in that Roush car could benefit like what happened with the 6 car this year with Newman behind the wheel. It could make it a little bit better, put it more up front, and just put a new face in it.
Yeah. And then you got Ricky Stenhouse. He's going to move over with Ryan Preece. I think those would be 2 good teammates. I think Ryan Preece is doing all right. He's being quiet. He's not, being terrible. I think it's a good rookie year for Ryan Preece.
You're going to be dealing with 2 kind of dirt guys over here, I think. 2, short track racers, modified, and a dirt guy himself. They're both good at the short tracks, Martinsville and Bristol. We saw Stenhouse be really good at Bristol in the past coming years. And that 37 car has always been good at Bristol too. So it'll be interesting to see how, Ricky Stenhouse does with this car. I wouldn't say it's going to be a downgrade, but it's pretty close. They run basically next to each other on track as is. So it'll just be interesting to see how Ricky Stenhouse accumulates with this new team that he's going to.
Yeah, interesting. Jack Roush said it was a mistake to let Chris Buescher go. Still had him on, basically loan almost. He still had rights to Chris Buescher. So it's good to see them come back. I think Chris Buescher will win a race next year. I'm pretty confident in that one.
I can see it. Yeah, I can definitely see it. He's been really good at the short tracks too.
Yeah, no, Chris Buescher's good. And we'll move into the Xfinity Series. Harrison Burton will move up from the trucks to the Xfinity Series, replacing Christopher Bell in that 20 car. This will be a real test for Harrison Burton to see where he really is at, because Christopher Bell put that car in victory lane, I think, now like 17 times in 2 years.
I don't know if it's me or not, and you can agree or disagree with me, but I feel like this is kind of just a fill-in seat. I think they're bringing Harrison Burton up just to fill in Christopher Bell's seat because I don't think they really have anybody else. You have Todd Gilliland, and Harrison Burton back in the Truck Series. Now you're pushing them up to the Xfinity Series. I think Harrison Burton still needs a couple more years in the Truck Series just to kind of feel things out. He has only one win in the Truck Series, and that came at Martinsville a couple years ago. So I think, you know, he just needs a little bit more experience back in the Truck Series before he can come up to the Xfinity Series. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but to me, I feel like he's just kind of a fill-in ride because you need to put someone in the car, and you have really nobody else in line besides Todd Gilliland or Harrison Burton.
Yeah, he's got the sponsorship with Dex Images, and what this does now is it kind of slows down the drivers for Toyota. It kind of slows it down to where they're kind of set with drivers now for the next few years. So I think it's almost a good thing because Brandon Jones is not going to the Cup Series anytime soon.
No, he's not.
Harrison Burton won't be. Any of the truck guys aren't. So it kind of sets the Gibbs drivers are kind of set for now. The only thing that's going to be interesting next year is Eric Jones and Christopher Bell. We'll see how those two do and see who goes where. I wonder if Gibbs will keep that Levine Family Racing Alliance to hold those all five of those drivers until eventually, years down the road where Hamlin or Truex retire. So it'd be interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if Levine Family Racing, with the small budget that they kind of have. I understand they do have the alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, but they got to see how their budget's going to be in the next coming years down the road because, as Joe Gibbs keeps giving them much better equipment, the price for all that equipment is going to continue to go up. So I wonder if Levine Family Racing will have the financial support, or they're going to end up like Furniture Row Racing and have to close their doors in the next coming years because of the alliance.
Yeah, definitely some interesting things coming out of the Toyota camp. And one more move in the Xfinity Series, Ross Chastain will be in the 10 Kaulig ride next year, being the second full-time Kaulig car alongside Justin Haley in the 11. Justin Haley was able to put that car in the playoffs, got eliminated first round after Dover. I think this is a big break for Ross Chastain, as he's one of those guys that was able to outperform some underfunded equipment, and he's in the championship battle in the Truck Series, and this will help him next year maybe even contend for an Xfinity championship.
Yeah, he definitely could contend for an Xfinity championship, and I think, this could be a step forward for him to get into the Cup Series, possibly in 2021 or, in 2022, whenever the time comes. But I think, this is the next step forward. We now know that he's in Kaulig Racing, so it's a Chevy, so it's either going to be probably for him going to, who knows, maybe replacing Johnson in the 48 at Hendrick Motorsports or replacing Kurt Busch in the 1 at Chip Ganassi. Both those drivers are kind of starting to get to the end of their wits' ends here in their careers. So a ride could be opening up here in the next couple of years for possible Ross Chastain to enter in the Cup Series.
Okay, call me crazy, but do you think there's any chance Kyle Larson leaves Ganassi to go to Hendrick?
I don't think so. No, I think he's seen the progress that Ganassi has done. He's seen what Ganassi has brought to the table and seen what the equipment that he's given. And I think he's pretty content and likes it over there at Chip Ganassi Racing. I haven't seen anything about complaints or anything like that. He seems pretty content. He seems really happy over there, and I think he likes it over at Chip Ganassi.
All right.
Not only that, but another thing on topic is because they do have two cars with Kurt Busch and Kyle Larson, I think Chip Ganassi turns to Kyle Larson more than Kurt, being that young, talented, and experienced, because he has been showing a little bit more speed than Kurt has in the beginning of the year, but then Kurt did come back in the summer months showing that he had more speed. But I feel like, Kyle has shown that he's been able to continue on because Kurt's now out of the playoffs. Kyle Larson's still in. He's actually advanced to the next round. So I feel like, they give Kyle a little bit more better, I wouldn't say better equipment, but they have him as like the number one driver, I would say.
Yeah, he finally breaks that barrier and getting into the round of 8 for the first time in his career. So that'll be interesting. I know I talked with Wes last week about Kyle Larson and this next upcoming round, I said he has to get past Martinsville. Martinsville's going to be the Achilles heel in that round for him. He's definitely not been the best there.
Yeah,
So,
it will be interesting to see how he does.
yeah. And, with that, I think we're in a good position here. We go into Kansas. I think, some of the favorites got to be Truex. You got to look at the Penske cars. They seem to be good at, Kansas. No matter what they've been doing the last couple weeks. Kyle Larson's good at Kansas. He's got nothing to lose, so I think you could see him up front. Chase Elliott and the Hendrick guys, him and Bowman. I think those two with, having the win, I think they're going to be up front for a lot of the race.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, you can't look past is qualifying. Qualifying is going to be important for this race. Being up front early with stage one, points being there, I think qualifying is a very important aspect to this race.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, positioning yourself for the first couple laps because definitely, if you start towards the back, it's going to be a lot harder to get up to the front as it was for Talladega. So getting those stage points from the very beginning is going to be what's key for some of these playoff guys. I feel like a lot of guys in the back, like Chase Elliott, Boyer, Bowman, and Byron are going to be up front trying to go for all those stage points. And guys like Keselowski and Logano are going to try to go for those stage points as well to solidify themselves in a better spot for the next round.
All right. And, with this race comes the playoff drivers to steer clear from. My playoff drivers to steer clear from this week are Clint Bowyer and William Byron. Clint Bowyer has just not been notoriously good at Kansas. He seems to be snake bit there. And other than the spring race here, he really has not been there at the end. Honestly, he is DNF there a handful of times. He's just been a non-factor a lot of the times. And William Byron, yeah, Chad Knaus, you think, of clutch, you think Chad Knaus. I just don't think Byron's ready, to take that, and go win his first race this week. And I think they're going to be kind of mired toward the back end of the top 10. Definitely not bad, but just I don't think he's going to have a chance to win.
Yeah, those are going to be my drivers as well. Like I said, Bowyer hasn't been running up front as much at Kansas. He hasn't really had the best of records there. Definitely wouldn't be the favorite to go in and win this race, of course. And then moving over to Byron, I feel like, you mentioned Chad Knaus would make some strategy calls. I feel like he would do some no tires or two tire strategy calls to just get stage points. But obviously, I don't think Byron's going to be there for a strategy call to win the race. Obviously, I think, he's not, unless he has a stellar car like he has at some of these tracks, I guess, to where he could get the pole, of course. But, if he doesn't have the car like he has when he gets the pole, he just seems to fall off a lot quicker than he goes for qualifying. It just, I don't think he's going to be able to run up front as much as we expect him to be. So I wouldn't be looking for him I would love to see him get his first win, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen this week.
I agree. And before we finish up here, Jordan, who do you have winning?
Alex Bowman.
Kansas.
Alex Bowman. I'm going to go with Bowman the Showman's going to upset the whole field and everything and come back and knock one of the Penske cars out of the playoffs. I feel like, Bowman showed a lot of encouragement in the first Kansas race, finishing second and leading most of the laps at the second half of the race and only losing by one spot to Keselowski in a late race restart. But Chicagoland really showed me that Bowman and these mile-and-a-half program that Hendrick Motorsports has been producing has really come to fruition.
And with that, I'll follow that up with which one of the Penske guys falls out.
I'm going to say it's going to be Joey Logano. The defending champion Joey Logano is going to fall out, I say, out of the two Penske guys.
All right. And I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. to win Sunday. I think that team needs to, they got second at Dover. I think they want some more momentum going into this round of 8. They want more playoff points. They're always hungry for those stage wins and those race wins.
They did win the last mile-and-a-half race.
They did. I think Martin Truex Jr. goes in, wins that race, and just builds some more momentum, gets some more playoff points into the round of 8. And I think the 8 in right now are going to be the 8 that leave Kansas in. So you'll have 3 Penske guys, 3 Gibbs guys, and then you got Harvick and Larson. I think that's what we're going to see in the round of 8. The round of 8 is going to be interesting. We'll get into that next week. But other than that, any last thoughts from you, Jordan?
It'll be interesting to see what happens with all these crazy restarts that we'll be seeing in Kansas. It'd be interesting to watch and see which drivers are going to go to the front and which drivers are going to be the standout. So I'm looking forward to the race on Sunday.
All right. Definitely going to be good racing. Good luck with you at Homestead. And we'll see you guys next week. I'm Dom Cass from Belly Up Racing and Belly Up Sports. Go check Belly Up Racing out on Twitter as well with Belly Up Sports. I actually just posted an article about Denny Hamlin and his changes from last year to this year. So go check that article out on Belly Up Sports. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.